Lots of NHL news and rumors around the league to take a look at today. Some big teams like the Penguins and the Bruins. Could we see drastic changes in the near future as those teams struggle to solidify themselves as NHL playoff contenders this year? Plus, we're going to take a look at the New York Rangers and some moves we could see in the offseason, assuming that things don't go as planned this year. We also have another big and busy day on the NHL waiver wire front. Some big news from the NHL GM meetings as well, including some of the things on the wish list for the next CBA. We'll discuss all that and some roster moves and injury updates coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to talk about here today. Let's kick things off first with some big updates from the NHL waiver wire. Now, I do have a dedicated video out that I put out a few hours ago on the channel if you want a little bit more of an in-depth analysis on this topic, but certainly check that out if you haven't already. But the waiver wire has been busy between yesterday and today. We had 3 players on waivers yesterday. Today we have 2 more, and then we do have a claim as well from yesterday. So Andreas Athanasiou with the Blackhawks cleared. His $4.25 million contract for the remainder of this season was not picked up, so he can be reassigned to their AHL affiliate in Rockford. And Matt Benning of the Toronto Maple Leafs, who was acquired from San Jose in the Timothy Liljegren trade, has cleared as well. I think there's definitely teams that have interest in this player. I think it's the second year that he has on his contract. It's not just the current one. There's one more year on there, which might be a deterrent for some teams. So we'll see what happens, but I would suspect that the Leafs will continue to try to find an opportunity for him to be able to play NHL games sooner than later. And if things don't materialize, you never know. Maybe they'll run into injuries and might benefit from having him after all. Only time will tell, but he's been assigned to the Marlies in the American Hockey League for the time being. Goaltender Kaapo Kähkönen, of course, was placed on waivers by the Colorado Avalanche, and he was the one from yesterday who was claimed. He was actually reclaimed by the Winnipeg Jets, who he originally had signed with as the unrestricted free agent in the offseason. Of course, last year, Kähkönen split the year between the Sharks and Devils. Actually didn't do too bad in New Jersey after arriving there to finish out the season, but he was not picked up by the Devils on a new contract, so he hit the UFA market, signed with Winnipeg, who of course we know also has Connor Hellebuyck and Eric Comrie. So certainly, a bit of competition between he and Comrie for the backup job. Comrie appeared to have won that job through training camp. Kähkönen got put on waivers, and he was ultimately picked up by the Avs, who were obviously struggling with goaltending. Georgiev was having a heck of a time making a save. Of course, they were looking for a Noonan to kind of take over, and things are a little more stable now. So they put him back on waivers, and because no other team put a claim in, just the Winnipeg Jets, they're actually able to send him directly to the American Hockey League. So Kähkönen's been reassigned back to the Winnipeg Jets farm team, the Manitoba Moose. So obviously he'll go back to where he was start of the year and can go to the AHL. So nothing too shocking there. I'm a little bit surprised in a way that another team didn't put a claim in on Kähkönen or Benning. I didn't expect Athanasiou to get picked up, but obviously teams have their reasons. Like I said before, though, with players clear waivers, sometimes they can become more attractive as a trade option, because now if they are traded, they don't have to go through that process again. They can go automatically to the new team's AHL franchise and be kind of stashed there for a later date, so to speak. So we'll see what happens. Today on waivers, we have goaltender James Reimer, who's currently with the Anaheim Ducks. He started the year with the Buffalo Sabres. If I'm not mistaken, I think in the video I did earlier, I think I said he was signed with Detroit. Of course, that's not correct. If I did say that, I apologize for the mistake. He was with Detroit last year, signed with the Sabres as a UFA this year, and ended up on waivers. Of course, lost the battle between UPL and Devin Levi to be the backup. So he went on waivers. I think the Sabres were going to be happy to have him in the minors if they could keep him, but that didn't happen. Anaheim, of course, had John Gibson out injured, so he was able to fill in while Gibson was out. Lucas Dostal ran with the starting goaltending job. Reimer only ended up playing 2 games, didn't have great results there, but obviously has a long resume that teams might take a look at. He's not signed for any length of term or money, so it's really just short-term cheap money here if a team wants to take a chance and add some depth. So we'll find out tomorrow if he gets claimed. And then Riley Stillman with the Carolina Hurricanes is on waivers. Now, he would have likely ended up on waivers near the beginning of the season before everything rosters were finalized. But he ended up getting injured, so he was on season opening injured reserve. Stillman prepares to be cleared and return to action. He'll need waivers to go down and play in the AHL, so that's the purpose of what's going on with him here today. Now, some big updates as well from the NHL GM meetings. For one, we found out that longtime NHL veteran player, manager, a man of many roles over the years, Kenny Holland, formerly the GM of the Edmonton Oilers, has officially joined and is working now with the league itself. Of course, it'll be the first time he's working for the NHL and not directly for a hockey club, but he's now going to be a hockey operations consultant with the league. There was a lot of talk back earlier towards the end of the summer, early part of the fall here, that he had talked to a few different teams and he had talked to the league about some opportunities as well. There was a couple of teams, I think, that were willing to give him like a consulting job, but obviously this seemed more appealing for him. So he's officially on board as a hockey ops consultant. And then Pierre LeBrun's reporting out of the GM meetings taking place now in Toronto. Of course, today is the first day. A couple of big topics that were being discussed. One was actually tampering. I'm a little bit surprised. He says obviously the league reviews stuff all the time, whether it's, comments or, trade talk or, UFA signings, all that, to make sure like nothing's, going on that's not supposed to be. And apparently there was a few things that they just kind of discovered that they weren't real thrilled with. So hate to break it to them, but tampering happens all the time. There's no way on July 1st, within the first hour that free agency takes place and teams and players are allowed to have these new conversations, that you get all these deals. Like, why is it when you hear of a negotiation dragging on for days and weeks at a time to get a deal done, but yet on UFA day, in the first 5-10 minutes, hour, you get all these players signing deals? Like, it's to me, it's got to be rampant, and I just don't think a lot of people really care. That it's kind of accepted as being part of it. And obviously, I'm not sure if the league actually does care, if this is more. I don't know what they're going to expect to do here, but obviously handling it is something that they're talking about, so we'll see what comes from that. And another very interesting thing from the executive committee and the GMs, they'd like to make the maximum NHL contract shorter. Currently, it sits as 8 years if you re-sign with your existing club, and if you sign a UFA deal with a new team, it's maximum of 7 years. They'd like to make that a little bit shorter. Of course, we know we're not too far away from the NHL CBA negotiations on a potential CBA extension starting up here. So that's something, to be honest, that I've said myself. I honestly don't know why they let them sign for so long. I know from a player perspective, I can see how they like that long-term security, but really, like, if you get a scenario where a player gets hurt and can't play as long as they would have otherwise, yes, maybe they lose money by doing shorter-term deals. But if you look at like the NBA, where you get guys like LeBron James and some of the other top players, they're opting out of their contracts every couple of years and redoing them because the cap goes up, they can make more money. So, if they make contracts shorter, that's going to create probably more player movement. It's going to create more trades probably. It's going to free up a lot of things. And to me, it's just going to make the game a lot more interesting. And secondly, from an owner perspective, you're not going to be, having so much risk on these longer term deals going bad. If they don't work out, you can be tied to that contract for a long time. Now, I'm not sure how much shorter they want to go. Instead of 7 and 8 years respectively, maybe it goes 5 and 6, or maybe it's 4 and 5 or something along those lines. But, ultimately from an ownership level, it reduces their risk. And then from a player's perspective, like I said, it might not give them as much job security, but it also allows them to get a new contract sooner and take advantage of the rising cap, rising revenue, and make more money. So we'll be curious to see how that plays out. I've been all for that for quite a long time, and I'd like to see them, of course, move forward with it. Some other updates around the NHL today when it comes to injuries and roster updates. The St. Louis Blues today confirmed that Matthew Joseph, who's been out of action due to injury for the past 6 games, will return to action tonight. So he returns. The Maple Leafs today recalled Alex Steeves. He is expected to play as Austin Matthews continues to be out. I think they called up Steeves. They don't seem to be overly pleased with the production or lack thereof from guys like McMahon and Robertson as of late. So give somebody like Steeves an opportunity here. Apparently Matthews, even though he'll miss tonight's Battle of Ontario against the Ottawa Senators, he is expected to be back probably on Saturday as the Leafs go head-to-head with Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers. Now, on the Sens side of the Battle of Ontario, Shane Pinto is 100% now confirmed to return tonight against the Leafs, and they have confirmed as well that Zach Ostapchuk has been returned to make room on a roster through the AHL. As I mentioned yesterday, with Ostapchuk was recalled, so I was like, well, maybe he's not the one coming out, but I'm not sure the reason for that. Because they also have uncertainty around like David Perron right now. He's been practicing. He's been away from the team for, I think he missed probably between 2 and 3 weeks dealing with a personal family issue. With his wife was pregnant. They were running into complications, and we don't really know a lot of the details, but it's a very personal situation off the ice. And he has been practicing with the Sens over the past, I don't know, probably a good chunk of the past week. But they've also been at home, so I don't know, if he'll be able to be with the team when they're home and maybe not travel. I'm not really sure what they're doing exactly and how things are, because they haven't really updated us. But I wonder if maybe Perron returning was a possibility as well. But Ostapchuk has been returned, so that obviously Pinto playing is one thing. I don't expect any other changes to the lineup given that he's been sent back. Winnipeg's confirmed that Logan Stanley is dealing with a middle body injuries, what they refer to it as, so he's going to be out for their short road trip. And the Vancouver Canucks have recalled Arshdeep Bains once again as well. He's gone up and down a lot here in the recent days. A lot of times, like I said, you see players that are waivers exempt that can go down to the American Hockey League without needing anything to clear, be picked up by other teams. Oftentimes they are sent down. Sometimes people accuse them of being cheap because they want to put them on their AHL salary for off days. But yes, that is true. That does happen. But the bigger part of it, and the bigger factor by far, is that they're not on the NHL roster, which reduces their salary cap capture, which allows them to accrue more space towards deadline acquisitions. That's the bigger part of it. It's not teams being cheap. It does affect their paycheck. Absolutely does. It sucks for those players. But until they're a little bit more established in their careers with, bigger contracts that are guaranteed and they're not waivers exempt anymore, then that sometimes comes with the territory. Unfortunately, it does suck though. In the Hockey Hall of Fame, of course, we know Hall of Fame weekend just went by. Lots of celebrations. We saw the inductions last night. Some great speeches with this year's class, and there's confirmation today. Some changes to the committee that runs the Hockey Hall of Fame. Pierre LeBrun did confirm this as well. Jerome McGinley and Eddie Olczyk are going to be joining the Hockey Hall of Fame selection committee, who they will replace David Branch, the outgoing member, of course, the longtime OHL and CHL commissioner, and Mike Gartner. Mike Gartner, of course, has been on the Hockey Hall of Fame committee for a really long time. Gartner's not leaving the Hockey Hall of Fame as a whole. He's now taken the top job, replacing, I believe he's taken over for Lanny McDonald, who I believe is retiring. So Gartner takes like the top, I think it's called the chairman, and him and Branch are no longer on the selection committee, and then McGinley and Olczyk will take those places. So certainly some long-time NHL talent there that will be able to have a say in who gets in the future. Now, as I mentioned, in the rumor mill, lots of teams to look at. One that's a little bit less urgent. We'll get to that one first. The New York Rangers. I've seen some speculation. I think part of it come from an Athletic article. Some of its fans kind of chammering online. We know the Rangers have high expectations. So far, they're doing well. Last year, they did it really well in the regular season. Lost out early in the playoffs. We know that there's a lot of trade talk around Jacob Trouba this offseason, and many expect with 1 year left to go, this is probably his last year. He either is going to be traded or bought out the summer coming up. That's pretty much what most people think is a slam dunk. Now, there's been some kind of talk if things don't go right and they don't have either a Stanley Cup win, Stanley Cup Finals appearance, probably at the very least a conference final appearance, or a good showing in it. I'm not sure what's going to be considered a failed season here, but some wondering if maybe could a player like Mika Zibanejad be a player on the outs as well? Could this team see something more significant, more radical change than just a Trouba exit? Now, the issue here with Mika, making $8.5 million, has a no trade clause, still has I believe it's 3 years left. Good player, productive player. I can understand the need for change, and I can understand how they might look at this and be like, geez, maybe we need a more significant change than just one player. The Igor Shesterkin extension is not done yet. Assuming it gets done at a big number, that's going to impact their cap. Yes, a Trouba contract coming off the books, depending on how they do it, though. If you trade him, you might have to retain 50%, so you're not going to get a full relief. If you buy him out, you're not getting full relief. So, there's different options there to look at, and they may have a need for more change, more relief cap-wise. Now, another big question is Artemi Panarin actually isn't too far from the end of his contract, too. Andrew Miller is another player who needs another contract soon. So, like, when you look at all these players that you think that they would want to keep and have been extremely good for them, it does make you wonder if another big contract, another big name, might be on the outs. But this is really only a worst-case scenario, that things don't go well, because we know the Rangers and the brass there were not happy with how things ended last year. And, like, Trouba took a lot of flack in the offseason, and we kind of know that there's kind of a plan in place for that moving forward. But, you know, for Mika to be included in this mix, to me, I don't think that's very likely. He's got a lot of protection in his contract. And to be honest, for the type of player he is and the productivity that we normally see from him, it's really not a bad contract. I mean, I know there was like a lot of it. There was an Athletic article apparently that deemed this contract to be untradeable and really bad, and that's kind of, I think, what got a lot of fans talking and generating a buzz around. Well, maybe he could be one to go if things don't go well this year, because you know that for if they have another really big regular season and another epic playoff failure, heads are going to roll. Big change is going to come, but I don't think that's going to be how you see it. I really don't. So we'll see what happens, but some think Mika could be one of the ones on the block if things don't go good this year. I'm not convinced of that just yet. Now in Boston, lots of heat, lots of pressure on the Bruins. Have not had the start to the season that they were hoping for. Obviously, internal expectations still incredibly high. And what I've said before when I've done my predictions and my analysis to this team and this regular season, and this division especially, I'm not shocked. Like, yes, they are not the same Bruins team that we've seen the last number of years. And to be honest, the last year or two, I was surprised on how much success they have had. You know, I honestly thought we'd saw a decline before this, and they're not horrible by any means. But have they been inconsistent? Yes, they have been. Have they had some really bad third periods and blowing leads? Yes, they have been. Have we seen Coach Jim Montgomery have some falling outs and run-ins, if you will, with Pasternak and Marchand? Yes, we have. Now, it doesn't mean that that's not unusual, not normal. Doesn't mean that the relationship's gone sour. It doesn't mean any of those things. You know, when you get people that are passionate and want to win, sometimes you have that. It's just the way it is. However, you know, you do wonder in Boston that they don't have a lot of patience there. And a lot of people think that either a big trade or a coach change is likely what's coming. Now, they have some big games coming up. Some people say another loss or two on the road, and it could spell the end of Jim Montgomery. I'm not completely sure it's fair. But, you know, if you take a look at the regular season success they've had and the players that he has had access to the past few years, with the lack of success that the team has had in the playoffs, okay, maybe it's fair, but I mean, he's a great coach. To be honest, if Montgomery is let go in Boston, I think you'll see another team make a change and pick him up right away if he wants to. I don't think he'd be out of work long. So we'll see. I mean, if you take a look at like their core players, they're mostly locked up on longer term deals with trade protection. The one guy who isn't is Captain Brad Marchand, who's yet to extend. I mean, you know, there was talk earlier in the year that they were close to getting a 3-year extension done, but that hasn't been announced. Marchand didn't really want to talk about it, said he wouldn't speak to the media about his contract. So we don't really know what's going on, but there's just been a lot of talk, a lot of speculation that something drastic is going to happen in Boston if they don't get things turned around and pronto. So we will see. Definitely a situation worth monitoring. And in Pittsburgh, another terrible game last night, down 6-0 to the Dallas Stars after one period of play. Ended up losing 7-0. You know, certainly no big surprise that the Pens are a team that's fully open for business. I know reports today from DKPittsburghSports.com and Taylor Haase saying that from what she's been hearing, that the Penguins are very much open for business, and anybody not named Sidney Crosby is available. Apparently, Crosby was promised by ownership in the offseason when he signed his extension that they would not go into rebuild mode while he was there, that they were going to do everything they can to remain competitive and win and kind of try to stay in win now competitive mode as long as he's playing as a Pittsburgh Penguin. And I know Dubas made some moves. He brought in a few players that were, you know, we said that they need more youth, they need more speed, they need more skill. They did some of that, but nothing really crazy, you know. So I think even, you know, there's obviously trade protection, but could we see moves from Erik Karlsson, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang? There's been rumors before about Letang in Montreal. I don't know that that's going to materialize, but there's been a lot of chatter around it in the past. Of course, Letang was a former client of Ken Hughes as well. That's probably where a lot of that comes from. Malkin's playing relatively well. I don't think that Malkin or Letang is really going to want to leave, especially not under these circumstances. And Crosby's certainly not going to want to see it. To make the team better, I mean, unfortunately, it's not really those guys that are playing really poorly. They've had issues with goaltending. They've had issues with their decor. They've had issues with the secondary, players around the forward group. I don't know what Kyle Dubas is going to do, but is Mike Sullivan on the hot seat? He's been there a really long time. At what point is he going to be worried that maybe they're not listening to him anymore? Is it time for a new voice, new change? I mean, he's been there one of the longest tenured coaches in the NHL. I think only John Cooper, I believe, is longer in Tampa right now, and another well-respected coach who's had a ton of success. But is it time for something different there? The Penguins need something. Marcus Pettersson's a player that we heard in the summer, and now that Crosby signed, he'll be the next one to get an extension. And that hasn't happened. Kyle Dubas wants to leave all his options open. He doesn't want to really commit to anything more until he knows how this team is doing. And now we know they're not doing so well. They're near the bottom of the division. They are, they can't beat any of the top teams. They're just not anywhere near good enough. Not only can you say they're not a cup contender, that's by far obvious to everybody. You can't even say right now that they're a serious playoff contender. I mean, based on the standings, you look at the numbers right now, it's not impossible to think that if they go on a run and get things turned around quick, that they could get in. It's not completely unfathomable, but at the same time, the way they've played, they're far from a guarantee. Teams like Columbus, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, the New York Islanders, they're going to have a really tough time getting in the division. Teams like Carolina, the Rangers, the Capitals, they have done a lot better. Washington's a lot better than I expected as well. Those are going to be your teams, and the Devils, of course, I think are in that mix too. They're going to be the teams that are going to be fighting for those roster spots. I thought there might be 5 teams from the Atlantic make it in this year, and it's still a possibility that could happen. But right now, the Metro seems to be a little stronger at the top than I was expecting. So, in all honesty, Pittsburgh is far off the mark. They need something in the worst way. So, when it comes to Pittsburgh and Boston, I think patience are running thin. Whether it's a coaching change or a big trade or something coming up, you're bound to see something sooner than later. I think it's inevitable if things don't turn around in a hurry, and I just don't see how that's very likely going to happen. But let me know what you think down in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.